Hello and welcome back. Now, Courtney, this is such a Courtney thing. I can't believe it. You said that the scariest thing was to be in a different state, going to school by yourself, living on your own,
Mm.
after the love of your life almost died twice, and you only were
Yeah,
able to save
literally
him
twice.
literally twice.
Almost died literally twice.
But you were only able to save him because serendipity, God, whomever said, "Hey,
Hmm.
here's a project for you to work on that actually talks about his symptoms." And you had a concussion, a mild concussion.
Yeah.
And that was not the scariest part. Being away from your family is such a Courtney thing to say. And that's what
Yeah.
it's just, oh my God. Like, if we were on Letterkenny, I would say that's what I appreciate about you. Because that is such a Courtney thing. You
I
take.
think it's because I've dealt with things where like it took me a long time to drive like after that car accident. It took me a long time to not like hover over Chris. And I get that, but a lot of that's like mental obstacles, right? You can kind of build yourself up to be like, "Hey, it was a fluke thing on all three accounts."
Hmm.
But the thing is, when you make a decision about, I'm going to literally uproot your entire life of what you were familiar with for at least 10 years, because about that at that time it was almost 9 to 10 years that I've been living in Virginia. That was all familiar. To not have literally any connections, and I was still going through what I was going through, mentally, where I'm like, I don't like being alone. I don't like eating alone. I had like all this other stuff. I didn't even know how to cook that well yet. And it was just kind of a thing of like, okay, like, but I had really good advice from a former boss, and he is still like my pinnacle of why I'm really
Recording
loving
in
documentary.
progress.
Um, but the whole point was to like he gave the advice of like, you don't have to stay where you're at if you don't like it. So
Yeah.
what's the worst that happens with Georgia? You go back to Virginia, you go back to New Jersey, you go back somewhere. Like I always had somebody to fall back on if things don't work out. And that's something that is a blessing. That is something I am very lucky to have, including with my husband's family as well. So it's just like, thank God, right? But yeah, it is a very Courtney thing to say, be like, oh no, I went through hell and high water that year. But I think at that point I was like, you know what's literally the worst that can happen, because I've literally been at the absolute worst. And I even remember telling people about that whole series of events.
Yes.
And they're like, you have gone through almost like 10 years of craziness in a year
Yeah.
in a relationship.
Yeah.
And that point, Chris and I were together for about 6 years too. So even the hospital staff was like, look, if you don't marry this girl after all this craziness, like we are going to come after you.
For sure. For sure. And
So
if you ever have the pleasure of witnessing these two, they complement each other very, very well.
yeah.
As my mom keeps saying to me, you got to find someone that fills in your gaps and you fill in their gaps. Chris
Yeah.
Shirk is a Viking of a man, as I like to say,
Yeah.
and as Courtney likes to say. He's a very well thought, logical thinking individual with a
Mm-hmm.
very emotional, creative person that is Courtney, we all know and love, and they
Yeah.
get along, and I don't worry about them so much. I really don't.
Yeah.
I worry about the world trying to do something to them, because
Yeah.
they have just like the old concept of how do you make iron stronger? You heat it, you cool it. You heat it, you cool it, you beat it. Rinse and repeat. And you two have been doing that to your relationship since, from what I understand, day one. And it's just it's
Yeah.
admirable, supremely admirable.
Yeah. It's crazy. I've known him since I was 18 years old, and that's
Mm-hmm.
such a weird thing. And I'm now 34 this year. And so to know somebody almost as long as we've known each other,
Yeah.
to have somebody within your bubble that like knows everything. And we were friends for 2 solid years
Mm-hmm.
before we even started dating. We weren't even planning on dating. I have a whole episode of like talking about how in the world we got together, and just calling him my ride or die, because it really is like he is my genuine ride or die. Like, yeah, you
Facts.
have every relationship possibility, but here's the thing: like I, from day one, like when we started dating, I was like this with his family. Like I was just absolutely like tied in, and to have them there and treat me like their own daughter is amazing. Like that's something that you don't always get from significant others. But in Chris's case, like he is very, very creative, and like he does tabletop games, and he's like the guy who runs them, and he's writing a book right now, and we're getting through that too.
Wait,
But
what?
like,
He's writing a book? Should
yeah,
we know more about this?
He's writing a fantasy book. He is now just getting to the last stages of the maps. He's physically drawing out the maps, and he is super detailed. And you know, like he's a big guy. He's like 6'4". He has the biggest hands. Like his hand surpasses mine. He is so meticulously detailed that he is like this. And it's so funny because like I've been to painting classes and things. I remember my painting professor being like, you have to learn to spread on the canvas with big brushes before you get brushes with 2 hairs on them and start doing this. And I'm like, that's Chris.
So,
but yeah, he's doing a fantasy book.
What's the book called? And can you give us a little bit of synopsis, or is it too early before you're publishing it?
We are definitely going to promote it when it gets published. We are independently publishing, but I will tell you, it is very much, if you like David Eddings, if you like the old school Robert Jordan books with Wheel of Time and that kind of thing, like he was very inspired by that. Plus, if you're a big Lord of the Rings fan, which we both are, it very much has its thing. But what I love about his characters, I will say, his first chapter, I think we rearranged it, but like when you get to know this character, the male character, he is like the pinnacle of what you expect a battered soldier to be, which is not usual for a lot of fantasy stuff. But what was cool was, and I will tell you the story of how we started actually editing together because I feel like that's relevant. But
sure.
My husband has been working on this book since high school. He is now, later 30s. So he has off and on been writing and been tweaking it and whatever. And he would have full conversations about this book, like full conversations about how the characters are, like tavern conversations. He is just so involved in this book. So when he finally printed it all out in this massive binder, now granted, it was 800 pages when we first started this. It is now very much shrunk, but I was reading the first chapter and he wanted my take on it. And I'm like, all right. So I read the first couple lines. And I'm like, all right, hold on a second. Do you want me to read it? Or do you want me to give your 2 cents? Because he knows that I write. He encourages me writing as well. He's like, no, I want your opinion. And I'm like, all right, well, you're going to have to sit down and we're going to literally edit this together from start to finish. And so that became like the last 6 months, 9 months of us just sitting together for like an hour a day, 2 hours a day, reading a chapter, going through grammar, reading through a chapter. Do you really need this conversation? Do you really need that? But it was so cool to finally like sit down because he's been telling me to read it forever. And like, I would just be so engulfed in my atmosphere that I'm like, I just want to dedicate time to it. I don't want to like sacrifice the not brain cells to not focus on it. But his characters are so enjoyable.
Yes. And
that's one thing I love about it. And as somebody who doesn't read like high-end fantasy, I've always been intimidated by reading it. To have him write like, and it's so surreal having somebody in your life that writes like a professional fantasy writer. Like you don't even know it's him. And it's such a blessing that we have the option to independently publish, because we did do the whole like send it out to a publisher and we had to wait a year. And I'm like, and I told him when we got the reduction letter, I'm like, we are not doing this again. We are going to publish it ourselves. I don't care if we do it on a blog. I don't care if we do it on an audio podcast. Like, we're going to do this.
Well, if you do it on an audio podcast, you know, I could provide some voice work for you. I could go down my narrator voice.
That's been the mentality though. And he's so grateful that he has like literally his family and a spouse to like super support him on it, because writing's a job. Writing is a legitimate job. And I told him I would rather you just see it on an actual shelf than be on the shelf in our study and it never sees the light of day. But it is very high-end fantasy. We do have the book cover, which is amazing. As soon as I saw, I'm like, that is your book cover. I don't care what you say. Like, that is the automatic, like, I was zoned in on it. And I'm like, that would be something I would pick up. So we're hoping we'll get it published by the end of the summer, which is amazing.
That is very amazing.
So, but it's so cool to see him go through that, because it's such a big accomplishment. And it's such a cool thing to have somebody who is just as passionate as you are about fantasy and creative stuff. And he just enjoys every second of it, which is, you know, that's my blessing, is seeing my significant other happy and like genuinely enjoying himself. And, I'm going to be promoting the crap out of it when it comes out. So that is just who I am as a person. That's how he is with my stuff too. So that's the nice thing about the give and take. But yeah.
Yeah, you both see the value in each other, and not just as spouses, but as creatives. And what I like about your guys' relationship is you are a unit, but you also acknowledge your individuals in this unit, and will support each other wholeheartedly. To me, it seems very healthy and wonderful. And it's just great. I look forward to hearing about your guys' stuff. I mean, I'll have days where I'm just like, why am I doing this, that, and the other? And I'm like, Courtney, can you tell me something fun that you did today? And she's like, I made olive loaf for the first time, and it was great. And you're always like, when you come up, because it's gonna happen, and I know it's gonna happen, I'm gonna have fresh baked this, fresh baked that, and you'll have coffee because, as you all know, I am a bit of a coffee fanatic. Yeah. That's half the reason why I work for one of my companies. Yeah, it's because all the free coffee I can drink while on shift. Yeah, and I'm just so looking forward to just collaborating more and more with Courtney, because she is cut from the similar cloth that I am when it comes to just being passionate and just wanting to do more with the stuff. Like we both go on anxiety cliffs simultaneously. So like it's nice because what's nice is we don't actually go on the same time frame of the anxiety cliff. It rotates. This was my week. Last week was her week's. And we just kind of talk each other down.
I called you like crying the other day because I had something happen professionally that I wasn't expecting to happen. And like literally the next week I was like, dude, I want to quit. Like I genuinely just want to quit all this film stuff because like I'm not getting any headway with I'm not getting any interviews. I'm not getting any content creators coming back to me. Like, I don't know why in the world I do this. And like, we just sat and talked it out and like said, you're allowed to just breathe and just, like list a bunch of things that we've done together or we just do individually. And that's something that I feel like a lot of people need as creatives, is that creatives are their own worst enemy. Even Chris with his writing, like, I don't know how many times he's like, I don't know if I should do this book. And I'm like, no, you're going to do this book. Like, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it because I want you to finish this book.
My God.
It's crazy, dude. Like, I remember even in my 20s, like, I wanted to rip up paintings. I wanted to make sure, like, I didn't want to be, and it's so weird too, because growing up, my parents never said I couldn't do this stuff. They were worried about it being a full-time job.
Right, of course.
Because it wasn't a thing that was available, but they always encouraged my music. They always encouraged me painting. I had paintings on the walls in my house, but it's just funny how like you have one bad experience or several bad experiences that make you second guess, like, am I good at this? Was I meant for this? What's happening? So, it happens, but I also, I had something happen on social media of all places, and I don't really like it. It's partially a thing of there's two sides of every coin of social media, right? You can promote it and you can get used to people, but you can also get kind of absorbed in it.
Yes.
I did have a moment where I posted something, and it was just something a friend of mine sent me actually, and I thought that was a really cool thing. And it said, just because you're in your situation now does not mean this is forever. Yes. And you just need to move forward in some way. Like, it was something very, very simple. I posted that on a story, and this random person that I met from like a Twitch stream that I kind of come in and just talk to people, and they do really cool like campaign stuff and whatever. They were like, thank you so much for posting that. I really freaking needed that today.
Aww.
But that's the pinnacle of why I do things. Like, I encourage my husband to do his writing book because I don't feel like it's fair to have a talent like writing.
Yes.
When not everybody does, to not write and to not write stories, at least for you. Because I've even had classes where people are like, you got to figure out your intent of why you do things. Is this for a bigger audience? Is this for somebody to pick it up and buy whatever? Or is this solely for you? And that's something that's very hard to grasp, because like you and I would be like, why are we doing this podcast? But then we have those moments of like, but there's this person that like really freaking enjoyed that episode. And you're like,
that's very true.
God, I meant like, I made somebody's day, right? And you can't get over the top about it. And because I second guess everything.
Yeah,
on my end.
Of course. I mean, so many times people have asked me, like, does it feel icky marketing your own stuff? I'm like, yeah,
of course,
but it's my stuff and I believe in it. And if I'm not comfortable promoting what I am doing, why is anyone else going to care about it? I mean, in the book Be Useful by Arnold Schwarzenegger, he even says you have to believe in your whatever more so than everybody else before other people start believing in it. And I actually have I actually have a fan who consistently listens to my podcast, Pulling Back the Curtain with Vinny Ali, on Spotify, cool. YouTube, and a couple of other locations consistently. He always asks, is there a new episode coming up? And there are some days I'm like, oh, can I afford to do another one? I mean, should I? But that drives me to be like, you know what? I'm going to keep posting content, even if it's old content, as I've done earlier, where I do my Joker impression, performing Shakespeare, acting reels. And this coming week, we're going to have an episode, or next week, whenever there will be a post of an old interview that I was interviewed about why I got into acting. And it's very much in the style
of cool, though.
Inside the Actor Studio. Yeah, I have more here and I'm a little darker here. And it was one of those days of like, what was coincidentally that same day that I recorded it, I got a good lesson from my coach in Muay Thai kickboxing. Gave me a nice little shiner. So so I'm just like, I mentioned that in the podcast.
Gotta keep your guard up, man.
Gotta keep my guard up, because like that's one thing I've always prided myself on. And whenever I would spar, whenever I would fight, I always would have good, strong defense. It would break their will to throw things at me. and I would go
get all their energy depleted.
Facts. I mean, it's not the smartest way to fight. It's better to just, move and counter. But I'm like a mobile tank. I have some mobility, but that's something I'm working on. I mean, I haven't trained 2 years now because, finances and life gets in the way. I do miss
happens.
It does.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm walking and I'm even technically doing yoga off and on because it helps with my back injury and things. But like, you just have to find.
You got to find your sport. That's all it is.
Yeah,
when you find your sport,
find your thing.
It doesn't feel like work. It just like, for me, Muay Thai didn't feel like work. I mean, it did, but it didn't. You just
said something. Hold on. You said something that I need you to understand with your craft.
No. What?
You just said it shouldn't feel like work. That is something that's been connected with me with the art stuff and with your job is it really shouldn't, because I've had very passionate people in multiple jobs that are like, if it doesn't feel like work, it does, like, it just makes their day better. Like I had guys who were engineering like so many hours, and they didn't care because it didn't feel like work. And I will tell you, like the one time I went with Joey, and if you see him, Joey Stuckey, he's amazing. He's a music guy from Macon, Georgia. I randomly got him from just being a commercial producer and doing his PSA. And then ever since then, we've been kind of working together. So that was back in 2017. But like, I remember distinctly, I got there in the morning at like 8 or 10 in the morning. Mm-hmm. We set up like a multicam shoot. We were doing like a stream thing on the iPad. It was such a cool thing. And like, he was doing like a concert in his studio. And that was such a cool thing. It was like a 10-hour day, 12-hour day.
Yep.
It did not feel like it at all. I like enjoyed every second of it. I was, talking to the band, but I'm like, dude, I want this to be my life. Like, I want this feeling every time I get into passion thing. Even yesterday when I was editing the podcast for the radio drama, I was psyching myself up for months because I'm like, oh no, like, how am I going to know how to do all this? Like, am I going to be okay? And then like, I was doing some of it and I made Chris, cause he was in the studio here with me, just doing his own thing. And I'm like, can you listen to this real quick? And he's like, that sounds like it's going into a radio drama. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Yeah. And like, he just thought everything paced out well. But like, I was having, like, I'm trying to be okay with playing. So that's the thing is with this entire podcast, you have so many stories that you called me on the phone and be like, Courtney, you have no idea what to believe in this. And I'm like, what's happening? So like, I like that energy from you. That's why I've been encouraging you from the get-go to do this. Like, even, when you talked about how this was a couple years ago,
2020,
because I feel like your stories are going to help somebody, even a guy that I know who's on professional crazy sets, he's like, we need more indie people talking about stuff. And he thinks it's the coolest thing. And he's an older guy that's been all over.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool. Like it's your own brand of things. And that's why when I was thinking about my podcast, I called you and you encouraged me for like almost an hour saying you are the best freaking person to talk about all the stuff that you're talking about.
Facts. I mean, you are like just when you did the 2 internships, it made you into well, lack of a better term, one-man army. Like you get confused when you actually have a crew to work with.
Yeah.
Because you're
no, you were there on Called in Blue. I had like 2 or 3 other people, and I was like, 3. What do I do?
Right. Yeah. You delegated, you let people do their thing. And I mean, one thing I've always talked to you about is like, I just want to get on set and I just want to act. I don't want to have to do like fix this, that, and the other. I mean, so many times I've had to, be a boom mic, which I don't mind doing, but it's
a difficult job though.
Of course, everything's a difficult job on set. I mean, you have to be passionate about it, or else why the hell else are you going to hold this, 25-pound thing for like, 30 minutes at a time, or you're going to move the dolly and set this up, set that up, make sure it's all consistent. You have to have a passion for it, or else you're just going to be a crazy person, because most of the time on student films, you get copy, credit, food, and that's it. You're taking off work to do this project. You're taking time away from your family to do this thing.
You're taking time away from another project to do this project.
Exactly. You say yes to one thing, you're saying no to another.
Yeah.
It's just this is the nature of the beast when it comes to being creative. And working with you was nice because you let me do what was really nice is we forgot to mention this part. Split decision. I told you I've always felt like I'm just like by myself on set, and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna write him.
That's a great idea.
Oh, it was a great idea. So she made me write. She wrote 2 characters for me that I played simultaneously.
Yeah.
And it was such a wonderful back and forth that I really enjoyed. And we will have a link here for sure. And Called in Blue. Yeah. I wrote a little short. I write shorts, like just I see scenes and I write out scenes. And I wrote something and Courtney was like, okay, I think I can work with this. So pretty much the whole premise is that a man comes home and his wife comes in and says to him that it's time for me to go back to war. I'm like, no, it's not. I will go. I'm the man. It's my job. Mm-hmm. And she reveals that it's more than just her going to war. It's for the good of the country, good of the family. And when she said family, it's like she's actually pregnant. And she took that concept and made this whole wonderful short called Called in Blue. And I had such a so dumb. I had such a wonderful epiphany of when there's this big reveal in it, and I looked at Jennifer. Jennifer is freaking wonderful. We should put her IMDb in there too.
Yeah, if I can get her contact, I will definitely send it to you because she loved working with you. It was fun.
She was great. She vibed with me very well, and she just had such wonderful pacing when she gave me this big reveal, and it was just like subtle enough that I got chills up and down. I'm getting chills right now up and down my spine about the whole thing. And Courtney has this wonderful understanding of trusting people to do their job as much as she just wants to do it herself. She's like, nope. I hired you to do this job. I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to compensate you as best I can with the resources she has. That's the one thing. I mean, there's just a lot of things about Courtney, about you that I appreciate, but that's definitely one of them. And she recently made an LLC called
Risen Fire Creative, but I go by Risen Fire Productions on Instagram and on Twitter and everything because it just goes well, and that's why we have the podcast as well, is to have that opportunity to just make our own content. We also have it for the book as well. Like it's going to be part of the book experience when Chris publishes. So it was just something that worked out. Like it was kind of a rebirth because of, film was kind of my rebirth, and that was kind of a thing. But it's just, and liking Phoenix lore and that kind of thing of like, okay, rise from the ashes and that kind of thing. That's always been kind of the backing of why I write certain characters and whatever. But yeah. And then I'm actually writing a book version of my feature script. That's kind of like mystery thriller
Can we get a name of the
supernatural-ish.
title, maybe? Get a little excitement
Uh,
going, a little buzz, buzz, buzz.
Somerset. So Somerset was based on a weird, well, an actual city, but like it was an inspired by a weird New Jersey story, and then making it into like an actual monster thriller feature. And Vinny's actually read it and really really loved it.
I did.
But I
I'm
felt like it was
nerd.
so much better as a book. And I even sent him the first couple chapters because I'm like, I like it's such a weird thing. But it's such a cool thing to have that ability to just switch over back to the book style, because filmmaking is definitely a it's definitely a different form of writing when it comes to scripting. But yeah, so we'll see.
My friend James Placius, who got me into writing and knew right away I was a writer, would always tell me, you got to get the format. You don't know how to write format. I'm like, bro, if we shoot this thing ourselves, we don't need proper formatting because we know how the story goes. It's not that big a deal. But he was very big about that. And, I would write too much. I would put too much information in there. But I'm also like, there's just so much that the actor could use and pull upon to actually create something. Because, I come from the stage and the play has like tons of details in there. One of the things we would do is we would do text analysis where we write down everything the playwright says about the character says about the character, what the other characters say about them, and their relationships, the given circumstances.
I think we had something similar because that sounds so familiar. Like every character could be a parallel of somebody else. Like this, like the mentor could be like the failure of if that character decided not to do it, or it could be the villain or whatever. And that was such a cool thing to do. Yeah,
we're both like we love. I mean, I don't know about Courtney, but I know for myself, I will prefer a character-driven storyline over a plot-driven storyline.
Oh yeah.
Any day.
Very much the same.
Because my favorite is when you establish a character will do X, but then they evolve and learn and do something different. Like Tony Stark in Iron Man constantly
totally
learns
character.
From start to finish. Right. He was just a genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. But like before, he was just a warmonger. He just wanted money. He wanted this, that, and the other. But it hid that he actually wanted to do more for society. And that's one thing that I admire about his character arc. And when it ended, spoiler alert, it ended beautifully. Go watch a movie.
Yes,
go read a book.
I think it does.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just how it goes. And and what's cool about Courtney is she's very much like, if an opportunity comes your way, follow it. Follow it.
Yeah.
See where it goes. I mean, all right. Well, there's a little plug since I've forced her to plug a bunch of stuff. I'm going to plug something from me. So I started on the stage and then I got into film because of a flyer I saw in a comic book store. And my buddy, my buddy John Tucker needed an extra guy for Nicholas Carrott's movie, 36 Miles. It's just like that. It just kind of fell into place. And I wanted to quit acting. I did. It's full on. And I did for a long time. But then Othello came up, an audition for Othello. So I hopped onto that. Had a great opportunity with that. And then recently I got into voice work, because like my face was like inhibiting me from getting certain work. And then at work, this guy comes up through, well, you guys know the story of Judah Priest, 144 fame, 144 represent. And that still is just a crazy thing, I mean, there's a song where my voice work will be featured at some point. And I got to MC for them, and you never know where this art will take you. It's you're forging your own path, and you just kind of have to roll with it. And last night, I had a wonderful conversation with my cousin, and she kept saying to me, you come from a very talented family. I'm like, what do you mean? I had no idea about this, is a world famous Bengali radio personality.
Which is so awesome.
I'm just like,
that's so cool.
I had no idea. She's just my cousin Bibu. I'm like, okay, that was Bibu. Blah, blah, blah. But then I found out her father and my grandfather. Well, my grandfather was a professor of English. He was well respected, and even Jahanara, his wife, my father's mother, was a poet, and there's like all this like writing genre in my father's side of the world, and in my mother's side of the world, they're avid readers, and like they'll have like stacks of Crichton and Terry Brooks and just like all these like
Yeah.
crime thrillers, you know. And it's really interesting that I've had to just embrace the fact that I am a writer by heart, and I just have to go with it and run with it. It's just nuts. And what's great is that we are in a society and that's constantly wanting and desiring new content, and there is an
Yeah.
audience for everything, and there's so
Yeah.
many different
There really
ways.
is.
You know, it's a double-edged sword, as everyone will probably figure out. That yeah, there's a lot of desire for it, but there's also a lot of people not getting the attention that they need in order to make it a full-time thing. And what I'm grateful for is that I've had to be forced to do all these crazy side jobs and life circumstances because it
Yeah.
deepens my understanding of the human condition. There was a guy that was saying, you know, why am I going to watch some rich people pretend to be normal in film? You know, why am I going to watch kids play a child's game, football, baseball, basketball, at these high levels? Why am I going to do that? I'd rather create and be a part of the creation of it. So that, because I'm a part of the people on the ground that know what it's like. And I think that, you know, a lot of really high-end people tend to get, you know, lose sight of what it means to be human and to be a family. And that's why, like, if you guys watch the convention route story, I often question that. Do I want to be mainstream famous or do I want to be more convention famous? Because you can still have your love and your life, but you know, the right people know who you are, and the right people. The con love is like family love. It's visceral, it's primal, but it's also in a small bubble. It's not like, you know, widespread across the world. They know about you. It's this little community that really appreciates who you are and what you bring to the table. Yeah.
Also, if you ever second guess something, and I think this is a good thing to wrap up this on, if you ever second guess your story or your genre or something, I actually had a professor tell me this.
What?
Don't worry about somebody picking your stuff up, because here's the thing. Somebody picked up Sharknado. Somebody picked up Snakes on a Plane. Somebody picked up, like, have you seen that there's a horror movie on a killer tire?
Yes.
This
Rubber
stuff exists. Like, there's always going to be somebody who will love your stuff.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's just that one person. So, yes, I know that it's so scary to put your heart and soul out there. I know it's so scary to do something you love that people do not understand. But like I just said in my last episode, do not base your version of happiness on other people's expectations of what your happiness is. Yeah. It does not make any sense. This is your life. You should be able to reap your talents and do what you want, because you are made for a reason. You're made on this earth at this time frame with this tool setting.
Yeah.
So do not worry about how crazy your obsessions are, your passions are, whatever they are, in a positive way. Just honestly, just enjoy your life and just have fun with it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. No. And that's what I try to tell Vinny almost every other time he calls me. And I say, I'm so proud of you. Look how much you've grown.
I'm like, no, don't tell me that, because then I keep doing it and trying to do more with my life.
Oh, God forbid. We have to listen to your amazing audiobook voice and talk to other people.
Yeah. But, you know, one thing speaking on the B movies, there is a movie called, you can look this up. It's an actual movie. It's called Hobo with a Shotgun. Horrendous, crazy, over-the-top gore. But there's one speech the hobo gives to a bunch of infants that are just born that just stops me dead in my tracks. It's along the lines of, you think you're going to take on the world and be a great and wonderful person, but then you're going to get influenced by drugs and sex and violence. And maybe you'll go crazy, or maybe you'll end up like me, a hobo with a shotgun. And to me, like, someone to put like a profound speech in something such a just throwaway garbage, not throwaway, like, it knows what it is. It exactly knows what it is. A B movie, over the top gore fest. But to throw something like that in there will definitely hit somebody. It's going to hit somebody. Right. So I think that is a good place to stop for our first interview. first collaboration with Courtney Adkisson.
Yeah, really.
You can find her at
Risen Fire Productions on Instagram, Twitter, but you can also find me on We Got Lucky, and it's basically just me. It's not, my husband got on there too, off and on, but it is just a good, positive, creative, let's hang out together kind of podcast. So have fun on Spotify or anywhere you can really stream it.
Facts.
So.
Well, folks, thank you so much for your time. This is Pulling Back the Curtain with Vinny Ali. And we have lovely Courtney Adkisson joining us today. And hopefully we'll have more episodes with her. Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the polls. And we'll see you next time.